Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Sal. I'm joined today by Jordan Bloom from Minor Threats and several other Marvel books that you are probably very familiar with, including MODOK and Spider-Verse, which includes or Edge of Spider-Verse, I should say. That was the
Mhm.
and yeah, I'm
I'm doing
excited.
more of that stuff. I just got to
Good.
announce I'm doing a Venom story that's going to be just as absurd, if not more, than the Spider-Ham one I got to do. So
Good. Yeah. No, that Spider-Ham book was that Spider-Ham story within it was great. I remember reading it and being like, huh, I really like the use of this. I wish there was like a series with him just doing this. Just
well,
this kind of
I
absurdity.
thought I think I misunderstood the assignment where I think they just wanted a Spider-Ham story, and then I was like, oh, this is one of those where you get to create a new Spider-Man and he'll pop up right in the bigger Spider-Verse story. So I threw one in there, and they're like, well, thank you for that, but we just really needed the Spider-Ham thing.
Yeah.
So we'll see if anyone does anything with Pete Spider-Man one day.
Oh, and I mean, finally addressing the hyphenless Spider-Man. Like I've been making, I know that joke so well from like just childhood, being like, his name isn't like Harold Spiderman, like attorney at law.
Yes.
Like he's got a hyphen there for a reason. But yeah, Pete Spiderman is so great, and
That means there
you know,
has to be one multiverse. Yeah.
exactly. And in a world of Spider Verses and across and edge of and intos, I feel like there's inevitability that Pete's going to show back up. um, so Jordan, you actually did a lot of research for this, and I did it in as much as I read the books and stuff. We heavily delved into this, but if you're watching the show and you're familiar with the episode title and thumbnail, then you know we're talking about Secret Wars. We're just going to look back and chat a little bit about the Hickman mega event that arguably changed Marvel and the way we look at it. It was like I want to say it's one of the biggest Marvel events of all time.
I'll say this: it's the best Marvel event of all time.
That's fair. I think that's there's stiff competition against that, and it's rare. It's like it's very
What do
small.
you say? What, Infinity Gauntlet?
Yeah, I mean, even then, it wasn't really much of a crossover. It was a crossover, but like, the tie-ins were very tangential. Everybody's kind of left to their own devices, and at the end of the day, Infinity Gauntlet is really just about Thanos and Adam Warlock, like every
it deals with a lot of like you're saying, like Pip the Troll and
yes,
Nebula and all these kind of Jim Starlin characters getting the bulk, I think, of the story, and it's a great story. But what I think Secret Wars does is it tells the ultimate Marvel Universe story, and Fantastic Four really at the heart of it.
Right.
So, but rereading it, everyone gets a moment, from the Punisher to Groot to the Thing, which I think we can talk about later, gets the best moment of the entire series. Spider-Man, Miles, that get their time to shine, and I think feels like a love letter to Marvel in a way that reflects on the original Secret Wars, which is the first crossover, right?
Yep.
Of all time, the first big event, I should say.
Yeah, because there's also Marvel Contest of Champions, which I think predates Secret Wars by like a year or two, and it's not great. Like it's a good opening act for Secret Wars.
Yeah, and I just think that this one, has ties to the original, because Doom is a big part of the original. He actually harnesses the power of the Beyonder, which is essentially what jumpstarts this series. Molecule Man is actually a big part of the original Secret Wars and Secret Wars 2. He ends up being a huge kind of MacGuffin in this. So I don't know. It reflects on that, but also looks forward. And again, it just gives you those like stand up and cheer moments for almost every character. Black Panther, everyone gets a scene at least, or a panel where you're like, I love that character. I love that character. And this reminds me why.
And it's definitive. Like it is a moment that, like the stakes have never been higher, but in a like way that works without it feeling inauthentic, while also still allowing the stakes to be character based, story based, but also it doesn't break the universe because the universe is already broken. So it's okay. Like, I mean, just
the first issue ends right with like Marvel Universe 1962 to I forgot what this 2016 whenever this came out.
2015, 2016. Smashing. Ending.
Yeah, it tells you it's dead. The Marvel Universe is dead. Something new starting in issue 2.
Yeah. And it's so apropos that it smashes into the Ultimate Universe. Like I love that the last two universes standing are Ultimate and Marvel proper because of the time during the Ultimate line. Like at the height of the Ultimate line, there
Mhm.
was scuttlebutt throughout from pundits, like, from fans, from creators being like, are they just going to jump ship? Like,
Mhm.
will the Ultimate Universe ultimately supplant the Marvel Universe someday? Obviously, looking back, it's like that was never going to happen. That was such
Yeah,
a
the
silly
answer is
idea.
hell
But
no. We'll take Miles and the evil Reed Richards and everything else
and that's it.
and go.
Yeah, and they've never really, and it's like it's a fitting end to the Ultimate Universe based on how it was kind of head in the direction that it was going at that
Yeah.
point. And nowadays, at the fancy of certain creators, the Ultimate Universe is like it kind of like blips back to life for a minute, and then you go, yeah,
Yeah. Well,
I don't think they're gonna
I
do
mean,
anything
the
with it.
thing is, it was a good experiment to do streamlined comics that could get
Yep.
new readers in, right? And I think it worked. It was highly successful. But then the same thing happened is that it started to collapse
Yep.
under the weight of it was doing new continuity. And I think there was sort of a shift where a lot of good talent was also moving back to the main Marvel universe. You had kind of Bendis, back headlining Avengers, which became the book, and you had
Yep.
Hickman on Fantastic Four, and he had left. I think like he had done the Ultimates and stuff like that. So there was already kind of, the writing was on the wall for the
Yeah.
Ultimate universe when this was happening. But it was very cool that this year-long storyline in Avengers, with these what was it called? The collisions of the planets,
Oh,
the
incursions. Yeah.
incursions. Thank you. That it comes down to these two worlds, and the book opens with a giant war
Yeah.
between. And I think that was such a great way to kick off the series.
Oh, agreed. Oh, I love how it actually really it hurt me so bad to see that when the Marvel universe ends, it ends with Iron Man and Captain America back at each other's throats again. But
Yes, like it's in
when
the
you look at
Avengers
this,
book, right?
right? But when you look at the subtext of it, of like being, yeah, I mean, like arguably Civil War may have like broken the event by being so successful, and
Mhm,
also it being like technology versus like class versus like tradition, and
mhm,
all of that kind of like being the last remnants of the world before the end of everything. Like there's a lot to it that while you're sad these two characters who are beloved by fans and are known to be teammates and friends,
right.
but they die at each other's throats, and you're like, yeah, but when you think about it like cosmically and mythologically, you're like, yeah, no, technology versus tradition at
Mhm,
odds at the end of everything. And it's like, yeah, that's fair. All right. And plus, like, what are they gonna do? Like it's at the core of Secret Wars, the core book,
mhm,
it is a Fantastic Four story at the end of the day,
mhm,
which is also really fun because of course it's during a time when everything that Hickman had been writing was building towards that moment or towards
mhm.
this event, but also behind the scenes, Fantastic Four is kind of like being suppressed, and so
Yes, and I think that's the most exciting thing about it is this is literally gonna be the biggest story, right?
yep,
For years, and I'm mourning the Fantastic Four. To me, they are one of the most significant parts of the Marvel Universe, and what this is why it comes down to Fantastic Four is they're also the first Marvel Age heroes, right? So
yeah,
this you're ending the Marvel Universe or rebooting the Marvel Universe, it's gotta come down to them because they were at the beginning.
yeah,
And so here I am, I'm depressed. I love, the Fantastic Four one, which then you go back and you're like, oh, if you really want to read all the at the beginning of his Fantastic Four run, which
yep,
then continues, he jumps to Avengers, but it's still that same story building. And then by the time you get to the last issue of Secret Wars, you're like, this was one long Fantastic Four love story, an
exactly.
ode to them. And it comes down to Doom and Reed as it should. And I think that was such a moment to celebrate. You're like, oh my God, he got it past like Perlmutter, whoever was in
Yeah,
charge, and he ended up like kind of sneaking in this love letter to the Fantastic Four and
absolutely.
making it the biggest crossover for years. And just to jump back to what you were saying about Civil War, I kind of feel like all the crossovers and the Marvel universe as a whole was kind of living in the shadows of Civil War. It was the biggest storyline at the time.
Yep.
Um, I think people are kind of split on it. And I think most of it's pretty good.
Yeah.
And after that, there's some really good cohesive Marvel storytelling with Dark Reign and Siege and all these other stories, but none of them kind of ever hit the excitement levels or scope, I want to say, of Civil War. So I love the idea that Avengers ends with Civil War kind of being rehashed and then it's just kind of wiped away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Somehow Hickman manages to pull this hat trick of Secret Wars being like dwarfing Civil War. Civil War being almost like a footnote within the the concept of Secret Wars. They do this thing that I think the closest analogy I can think of that Marvel or DC or anybody has ever done is like Age of Apocalypse, where
Mhm.
during the X-Men Age of Apocalypse, they were like, oh, we go back in time, we kill Xavier, and we change the timeline. And so for a little while, we're going to do this timeline. Secret Wars is similar in as much as like for a little while, the Marvel Universe is dead, and this is what's left. All the books are canceled, and we spin out with dozens of titles that, by and large, are excellent. Now, I remember you talking about off mic. I think you mentioned you're like, I kind of just looked at the core book, but like, I love the core book because every reason you said and more, because like you can pick through it, you can find moments in it. Assad Ribick's art is second to none. It gives you this like mythological quality to it. It feels like a Kingdom Come kind of thing, where it's like this is special and important and deep and big. But those tie-ins, or really just
Mhm.
the books that came out during that time, are some of the best work from those creators. Kieran Gillen comes on the scene from the indie scene and from other works, and gives us stuff like Siege. I believe Kieran Gillen wrote Siege, but like not
Yeah, he
Siege
did.
the event,
And
but Siege the tie-in book.
Siege actually has the best moment in the entire crossover because we keep talking about the Thing, and just to give a little backstory, we have this battle world. It's these
Yes.
different sections of different storylines and alt universes and stuff. They're all kind of patchwork together, and they're run by barons who all serve under God, Doom, world, and all that stuff. And we, during the first issue, the Fantastic Four kind of get scattered. They're on this life raft as the world is dying, and we find Sue and the kids, and they're side by side with Doom, and Johnny is the son who is powering everything, and you're like, where's Ben? Where is Ben? And we find Reed shows up. He's gonna kind of be the hero of the story, and you're wondering where Ben is. And there's very much like Game of Thrones, and I was amazed at how much it leaned into Game of Thrones, but it doesn't care in a way that there's a wall that holds back the Marvel zombies, right? And I believe Annihilus's Annihilation Wave and all that stuff. So there's a wall that's guarded, and it isn't entire series, and Siege, right, is set there, and Thanos of all people goes to the wall, and find out the wall is Ben Grimm, and he has the line, and I'm going to butcher it. He says something like that, and he says it's clobbering. God, now I wish I had.
Oh yeah, no, he says, "What time is it, Mr. Grimm?" He says,
awakens him, and you have a giant thing who goes to fight a giant Franklin Richard powered Galactus in a kaiju fight, and it's amazing. And again, it's like those moments right there. But Kieran Gillen got that moment in his book. It's not even as good when you see it happen in the main book.
No, but when you but it's and it does that thing that like tie-ins tend to botch, which is that like if it shows you another version of that scene, like you go, oh, is that like, I would like to see that, or that's a scene that I hope is paid off in a tie-in that gives me a deeper version of it. And you're like, oh, it's either glossed over, it never comes up. In this case, you actually get a way more fun look at that moment and get depth and explanation. I mean, Thanos is another major thing, and it's amazing how this book manages to do. Okay, so the book is so big and it's so important to Marvel, and it's just like you could go anywhere with it. But applauding it for its ability to be timeless while also doing the work that you imagine Marvel wants done, which is like, by the way, if you could like make Thanos really important for a little while. That would really help us out. Like if you could highlight Black Panther in a big way. You know, if you could, it is a core story about Doom versus Richards, but at the same time, could you also really focus on Captain Marvel and give her something really important to do? Can we give Thor something interesting? And just focus on these characters who we're going to see on the screen all united doing something kind of impressive, you know, in a short little while. Could you please, like, and I don't feel like it's all checking boxes and directives, but it still manages to do it. And it does it in a way that feels authentic. And you're just like, yeah, like, you know what? I know Thanos. And while Thanos written by Hickman is the closest thing to Thanos since Starlin, and even then it's very different, I still buy it. And he feels that, I feel that kind of gravitas that like you don't get when you're not reading like an Infinity Saga book by Starlin. And yet like you're in this world where, you know, Doom is God and Thanos is like, but that should be me. And you're kind of like, that's fair. And I want to see that fight. And the fight is 2 panels, but they're dynamite panels.
Yeah. Just dissolves them. It's what's really interesting. And you were talking about, you know, with Hickman, it kind of hit me. The success, right, of the spinoffs is you've seen this now with X-Men, where people have kind of referred to him as a showrunner. And what he does very good at is instead of trying to control every little piece, he creates kind of a sandbox that inspires people, gets people excited, and then goes, go, run with that story. And I think he's done that with Krakoa. And I think that's exactly what Secret Wars is where some of the series tie in more, like Siege. You know, others, like there's a whole Western world we never even see in the main book that's like a Marvel, you know, Wild West that Jerry Duggan
1872.
does.
Yeah, it's like
there's a map, I think, at the very end of the first issue or second, it explains Battle World, and then it's up to creators to pitch fun books, you know, set in them. And the beauty is that there's multiple versions of these characters living on. It's a multiverse smashed together. So it's like, yeah, you want to use, you know, Spider-Man in your Kung Fu one, go do that, you know, because we got a Spider-Man over here, and we've got, you know, a have world, and you know, it's just really neat that the people were, you know, the creatives were allowed to just do their thing, and either supports the main series or it's bonus. And I think it made those series really fun to read.
Oh, absolutely. No, every tie-in or book that came out at that time was doing something that was so that appears, and I hope it was for these for a lot of these creatives, creatively satisfying, fresh, and entirely different. Like none of these pitches would fit in what was going on in books that they supplanted. It wasn't like, oh, I can really save my 1602 Witch Hunter Angela book for something else. Nope, this is the only time you're ever going to be able to do that. And they do it so well that you're like, oh man. And some of them have virtually nothing to do. The Renew Your Vows one, for example, where it's like, yeah, you guys want Spider-Man and Mary Jane married? Here you go. That's that world where that happened. And like the last page, they go, hey, what was our main villain's problem? Oh, I don't know. He wanted to fight some guy named Doom. That's it. There's virtually nothing to do with Doom or the story, but that's fine because, first of all, you're getting a Kubert drawing it, which is awesome. And secondly, you're getting essentially what people, what a sect of the audience has been clamoring for, which is a married Spider-Man with a kid. So it's like you're getting a lot of fan service while also getting something original and exciting and new. I've argued
that that's, I was just going to say, I think that is an answer to what I tend to find like these tie-in fatigue, being that like, oh, they tell this tiny little insignificant story, but we were told it's this bigger thing and it's supposed to move the story forward and it's supposed to be directly here, where this to make this thing fit this tiny little section of a bigger story, you know, to fill in a gap or something like that. Where here, I think these writers were told, like, pitch me the craziest Ghost Rider you could. Oh, they're all racing each other. Awesome. Go make it. You know, like
you got 5 issues, like, right? Like, and then of course you also be reading
premium what ifs by amazing talent. You know, where sometimes What If was always like, oh, can we grab this artist? Can we grab that real quick? Get them out. One story, one done. We're out. these were like, I've got an epic story to tell. You know, it's kind of what publishers, I think, DC's been really good at lately with
Yeah.
Elseworlds and Black Label, is like, you know, sometimes you just want to tell a 4-issue epic story that uses the characters and interesting in the continuity. If we kill them or whatever, this is its own thing, let it be. And I think that's what a lot of those books were.
100%. Getting back to the main book, and just talking about that book for a second again, I forgot, like, the Black Order's in that book too, and so it's like, synergistically speaking, it makes a lot of sense. Black Swan is like, everything that like Hickman was building finally coalesces, and it's one of those things where I remember when, and I'm sure you do too, just the scuttlebutt, people talking about Hickman's work from Fantastic Four to Avengers, and its coordination with the New Avengers book that he was also doing. It's almost too esoteric. You're just kind of like, where are we going with this? Like, what is all this? And seeing the payoff, like the slam dunk of Secret Wars, you're like, let him do whatever he's going to do next, which is why I think there was so much good faith for the X-Men line, because it's like, oh well, he'll nail it. Knock yourself out. Don't get in his way.
I feel like we should talk about the X-Men in this story, because I think it's interesting. Because they're being sidelined too during this era.
Completely. Yeah. They are a casualty of the like the unspoken edict about Fox properties. And it's like, you can't help but showcase Richards, Doom, and the Fantastic Four and do something with them. And as you pointed out, like, making them mythological cornerstones in the infrastructure of the world itself is a smart way to hide them. You know, like, you can hide Ben Grimm in a wall and make him be a big deal at the end, and still argue with your bosses, like, don't worry, they're not really important until they are. But with X-Men, that's a tougher nut to crack. And I think you're right that they are absolutely sidelined. Like, the bulk of X-Men stuff we get from this, outside of the tie-ins, of course, and even then, it's a shame. We did get more X-Men tie-ins than I would have expected, but I think fewer than we would have if X-Men was allowed to flourish. But it's mostly just Cyclops with the Phoenix Force.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk about that, because it's a very weird storyline, because this is happening right around the end of the Bendis stuff, right? Bendis wraps up a run, and the vibe I get is that there was big editorials right around this time, because the Phoenix Egg comes out, blame that later kind of thing, because it's not really set up in the run, if I remember correctly. And I really like a lot of the Bendis run. I think bringing the original X-Men in, like the follow-up to AVX, where Cyclops essentially becomes the new Magneto.
Yes.
And, you know, with a darker side. I love that. And I love that Wolverine becomes the headmaster during this era. So suddenly Wolverine is the Boy Scout, and Cyclops is kind of the unpredictable rebel. And it's a really fun period to see those two switch roles. But this is all building towards, I believe, X-Men 600 or some big issue. And you can feel storylines being rushed. And there's some editorial inconsistencies. I remember, I keep bringing up Havoc, but that was one too, where he's mad, he's good, and then all of a sudden, you know, you can see Hickman has his plans. I know Beast is a big part of the lead up to Secret Wars, and Cyclops shows up in issue 1 with this Phoenix Egg that I assume was supposed to have been set up somewhere. And he's the only one on board this life raft, and he shows up and he's Phoenix powered, and it's this big scene with him and Doom, and it kind of ends instantly. And that's kind of it for the X-Men. Sinister is the only other big presence in the main book.
And you know, it's just because Hickman loves Sinister. Like, you know, it's just because Hickman's like, well, I can't not use Sinister. And that's never more apparent than he is in the current, like, Krakoa era of X-Men, where now
central figure.
He's got his own event now, which is dynamite, by the way. Like, I if anything, I'm just like, oh my god, can Cy Spurrier, Kieran Gillen, and Al Ewing just be the architects for Marvel from now until the end of time? Like, if it can't be Hickman, you know.
So I feel like Hickman paid us back later, because of the story. It doesn't hurt it in any way that the X-Men stuff is confusing, but they're not really central. You know, like the fact that there's no Wolverine moment. I guess he's dead when this is happening. Maybe. Yeah. Like
well,
there's no.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't thought about that, but there's no cool big Wolverine moment, and I think it could be. I think they killed him before Secret Wars, or did they not? I don't remember anymore. If like, okay, so because it's Old Man Logan, and I think they're like, because we got an Old Man Logan book, and at least we got some Sorrentino art,
and that comes out of after this, I believe. Well, we have an Old Man Logan spinoff.
Yeah, we got the War Zone of Old Man Logan, and then that Old Man Logan goes into the main universe. Yeah,
right. So that's we will talk about the aftermath of this, which is for Marvel, but yeah, it does feel like the most underrepresented team here is the X-Men, and then years later we get Hickman coming and going, "Oh, you want X-Men stories? How about," and make it the best it's been in years.
Absolutely. So, no, yeah,
you
get more Guardians of the Galaxy action than you do X-Men. I mean, there's no big Professor Xavier moment. There's no big Wolverine moment. There's you know, and cosmetically speaking, like I remember Maddie Pryor being in it a lot. You know, like I remember seeing the Goblin Queen in a lot of sequences, and I remember, you know, Sinister being in a lot of scenes, and Cyclops and his Phoenix Force being there, and it's like that's all. And I don't know if it was just Hickman working with what he was allowed to have, or if that was him focusing on what he liked the most, and was like, you know, they're like, you're allowed 4 characters.
I wonder if all the year leading up to the story was trying to track down a Phoenix egg, that scene would have had more weight. Like, oh, here it is. It's like, you know, the Fantastic Four getting the ultimate nullifier. Here comes the big, you know, weapon that they set up. They put on the mantle, the Chekhov's Phoenix egg. It's got to come back in a big way. And then showed up with a Phoenix egg. Well, what's this? Let's see where this goes. And then it just kind of, again, I don't want to critique this story. I love it. But that was, to me, the weakest part of this was the X-Men representation and the Phoenix egg payoff and all of that.
Yes.
But to go back to some positives, you were mentioning the Guardians of the Galaxy. One of the best moments, the whole time Star-Lord's there, he feels out of place. He doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing. He's kind of there. He's just pilot. He's flying them around for the big finale. He crashes into Doom's castle, and Doom's throne is from the World Tree, right?
Yeah.
And this whole time, Star-Lord's got this little toothpick, and you don't think anything of it. And then he goes to fight, I think,
Black Swan.
And he just stabs the toothpick into the World Tree, and you realize that toothpick was Groot the whole time, and Groot takes over the World Tree and burst out of the castle. And it's awesome.
Oh, again, what a spectacular moment.
Big, crazy moments. And I think it's all those things that you like stand up and cheer for at the end of Endgame or whatever. This book is just one after the other, I think, just lined up.
Oh yeah, you also get some moments that I think almost still yet haven't been paid off, with like finally meeting the Maker and Reed and having them work together and having them like learn of each other, because you don't really get a lot of interaction between those two characters. And even now we're kind of like, I kind of want more of that. Like, I want to see what Reed thinks of young Reed, young megalomaniacal evil Reed.
He's in the Marvel universe right now.
Yeah, he's still messing with symbiotes and doing whatever.
Well, that's teased, right, as this big bad that's setting something up. And has that ever paid off? Like, he was a big part of the Venom crossover a few years ago, like the Don Cates stuff. And I think Al Ewing was using him in something as like, oh, watch out, the Maker's up to something. But we've never gotten the, okay, time for me to kind of unveil my master plan, or this is what I've been working on in the Marvel universe. Like, we haven't gotten that yet.
Yeah. No, I can. Yeah, it's true. But even if we don't, it's still a cool fan servicey, but still makes sense within the context of this story moment in Secret Wars, where you're like, look at them working together. Look at that work going on. Black Panther wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, or an Infinity Gauntlet, is it's some of the coolest Black Panther stuff that you're just like, yeah, watch him go. But he gets two. He gets two massive moments. He gets the Infinity Gauntlet. And of course, him like kind of realizing his mantle of being like King of the Dead. and
Yes.
commanding the Marvel zombies, and it's like, oh, what a moment.
It's a great thing because he's been talking about it. It's kind of set up very early in the Avengers run, as is the Namor rivalry that's kind of and a few other things.
Yeah.
And then by the end, they're working side by side, and Namor's kind of balls being like, "Well, you keep talking about this, King of the Dead thing. What are you even talking about, man?" And he's like, "What are you doing over there?" And he breaks down the wall, and he's like, commanding the dead, and they just kind of all the Marvel zombies come out and bow to him, and
yes,
it's awesome. It's so awesome.
Yeah,
it's such a hard thing to do, is create those kind of iconic, badass moments. Like, it's what you want to read a comic for. And Hickman, again, he's just knocking them out left and right. Every other panel is a moment where you're like, I can't believe they did that. I never thought they could use their powers in that way, or what a callback to this. And it's so well thought out and brilliant. So I mean, keep praising it, but you have to, because we're talking about moments.
Well, and it's such a not that they don't make great comics, because they do. And I think that every, the argument of like, oh, they don't make comics like they used to. I'm like, no, they don't. But every year there's just like this groundswell of incredible books that come out. And, but it's so rare to pull off this kind of hat trick where, because you could, one could have like a checklist every year of like, here are big things I want to see in the big event. Like, and you got to check them off. And you could cosmetically recreate the moments that you think you want that Secret Wars delivers. But Secret Wars manages to do it in such a way that it feels earned and is paid off respectfully to both the characters and the material from which they come and the story that we're telling. It's not just a cool moment for Groot to blast out of it. It's not just cool to bridge the gap between like Yggdrasil and Groot and making him the effing world tree. It also works because Groot has been on this journey the entire time. He's been Chekhov's gun since the first issue, and we're paying it off here. And that moment of like destroying like Castle Doom is one element of like a multi-part plan to take down Doom. It's just like all of those things coalesce to being like an opportunity as opposed to a mandate.
And I think we haven't talked about this yet, but this is the definitive Doom story, because really the heart of the story is, what if Doom got everything he wanted and he was still miserable? What if Doom won?
Right. What if Doom won? Yeah.
And it's great character moment, because they flash back to this moment where the world's about to end. Doom, Malcolm Man, and Strange get the Beyonders to steal their power, and Strange buckles. Strange can't do it. Strange can't make the decision who lives and dies, how to rebuild it. It's too much for him. This character who's always been very stoic, very in control, he falters. And Doom, who's always been an egomaniac, is like, yeah, I can be a god. I'll do it. That's where our story starts, right? Is Doom has built this world, he's got a family, specifically Reeds. Everyone worships him, talks to him as a god, but there's still this kind of unrest, and there's still this thing in him where he hasn't let, I think, Reed go, or the things that always bring down Doom are still there, even in God mode. And that's what it's exploited, I think, in a really cool way.
Well, he doesn't even fix his own face. He's still wearing the mask. He can't bring himself to do it, or he can't do it. I think they say it in the book where it's like he can't fix his own face.
Yeah, he can't do it. And there's a great payoff to that, where once Reed gets the power, kind of wrestles it from Doom and starts to rebuild the universe, he fixes Doom's face, and that leads to a really great spin-off by Bendis, where he becomes the Sorcerer Supreme, right?
Oh, that was he becomes Iron Man.
Oh, Iron Man, that's right. Yeah, it's a mixture. Right? Magic Iron Man.
It's magic Iron Man. Yeah.
Right. That's what
that was such a good book too. Great looking book, and it was so fun, and it worked so well. That was another one that I think was cut short before its prime, where it was like, oh, like that wrapped up sooner than it should have. Because what do you do with Doom? As you said, this is the definitive Doom story. Like every time you use Doom now, it's like, well, I mean, he was God. And now what is he going to do? Is he going to, steal what? Is he gonna blow up who? How could he
Yeah.
care? Does the only way you'd fix it is like either to make him not remember that he was God in the first place, so he does it all over again, or you change him in some way, and having it be the 1-2 punch of like he was God, he's shown mercy by his friend from whom he stole everything,
Yeah.
and like what do I do now? I mean, and I think
And
that
it's
if
a moment of weakness. He has to admit to Reed's
yeah,
really better at this. He admits that he's not as good, which is like you never see that. There's the two things that
no,
this book does. You've never seen Doctor Doom's face fully. This gives it
mhm,
you. By the way, that Esad Ribic splash page, that's the first time we've really seen Doom's face clearly
mhm,
since Jack Kirby created him,
yeah.
which is crazy. Seen ideas, it's been healed kind of before, I think in the first
Well,
Secret
Secret
Wars.
Wars, yeah, he fixes
Yeah.
him. He fixes it himself. That's the first thing he does with the Beyond His Powers is fix his face, and
Yeah.
eh, yeah, that's such a smart move too. It's amazing that Shooter pulled that off in the original Secret Wars, where just by being infected by the Beyonder himself, Claw convinces Doom of a story, like just the possibility of loss, and subtly forces Doom to use the power to make it reality. And it's like,
Mhm.
what a cool moment. But when that happens, Doom immediately reverts back to himself and loses his face and has to wear the armor again. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good stuff.
And I love,
Um,
yeah, this when Reed gifts him his face back and he doesn't,
mhm.
it like breaks him. Because
Yeah.
when you Doom up after this storyline, he's Iron Man, he's trying to do good, he's trying to be a good, it's a hero Doom book because he's been
Yes.
broken. The villain broken and he's not sure what to do after he's admitted lost, and Reed bested him in a
Yeah.
way that he had to kind of say out loud. So it's a really cool place to pick Doom up, I think, after this.
Hmm.
And it's like again, it showcases like we all knew if you had who's the greatest villain in the Marvel, it was just always going to be Doom.
It is
Doom is
Doom. And yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's funny. It's actually there's the showdown between Doom and Thanos for me is like Hickman picking a side in the kind of like argument of who's better, who's more powerful, who's the ultimate true bad of the Marvel universe. Because Thanos makes a good point when he's facing Doom. He's like, because it's two egomaniacs who have just unmatchable egos, and Thanos just being like, I'll beat you. Like
Yeah.
I'm, his yet while his line won't be coined until later, his inevitability, and then just having Doom reach in and pull a skeleton out of his body. It's just such a showy, like, no,
Yeah.
actually no, like wrong. By the way, I don't know if you buy these, but like the Marvel Legends figure of God King Doom
Mhm.
comes with Thanos' skeleton.
Oh, no way. That's amazing. No, I don't
So
have
he
one.
could
I
hold it.
got
I should buy that and have him
Yeah.
on my desk.
I need that to remind me that Doom is the best. Well, it's an
Yeah.
interesting thing because I don't have anything against Thanos,
Right.
but
No.
at its very core, Thanos is a response to how cool Darkseid is. And I'm sorry,
Yes.
that's going to bring a lot of ire from Marvel fans who love Thanos. But look, Darkseid is a better character than Thanos. Thanos is we got to get our own Darkseid. And when
Yep.
he first shows up, he's kind of a joke. He's in his Thanos copter. He's not that menacing. Starlin does amazing work with him,
Mhm.
in a lot of those cosmic books. And yeah, like Infinity Gauntlet is a great story because it's through action, story that Thanos becomes Thanos, that becomes the
Yeah.
character that we actually care about. He wins. He wipes out half the universe. He's trying to impress Death. He has some really cool scenes, and from that moment on, he's a bigger character.
Yeah.
But he gets too much, where it's like Thanos, like as a prop, almost like he's not doing anything interesting for the next 20 years. He's just
Agreed.
kind of, oh, Thanos showed up, so it must be a big deal, but it's really not. And then I think
Yes.
Hickman finds a really interesting way to use him in the build up to this. And then I think Endgame, or Infinity, the movies
Yes.
build him up and make him more interesting than I think he's been in a lot of the comics,
Mhm.
and make him more iconic. But the reality, if you've read the comics, is Doom is so much better than Thanos and has better stories and has been around longer and done more to earn being the character who beats the Marvel universe in the comics.
Yeah, because it's funny, you don't really get a lot of his character throughout the entirety of the Infinity Saga, and it's really the work of Infinity War to establish who he really is as a character. And because the only indication we have is from the end of Avengers, where for all intents and purposes, we're going with the death angle. We're going with the death worshiper. He loves death, and we're going to do that because of the whole like courting death line. And then they just abjectly abandon that concept and go, nah, it's really, we're going to focus on the snap part of the character.
Yeah.
And but I think it's to the character's benefit because it makes it less of like a debate. It's more like, all right, yeah, I see his motivation, and it's less hacky than it could be if we screw it up. You know, like if because then we also have to. We're already asking the audience to accept a lot, and while we are kind of like paying it all off at the end of our saga, we also need to go. You know, do we show death as a person? Does death show up?
Yeah.
Do we cast death? And then do we fear him if he's groveling for this character the entire time? Like, let's just make him a genocidal man, like madman. Like, let's go with that.
He has a belief system that makes tons of sense to him.
Yes, to him.
Scarily to a lot of other people I've seen online.
I know, which I think is really mostly edgelording, but I hope it's
I'll get behind Magneto was right. I have a harder time with Thanos is right, but it's interesting because I think you and I, being comic fans, I think our go-to thing is like, yeah, no, the movies are great, but the comics did it better. Yeah. I would say there's certain characters, Scott Lang, Thanos, that I think are better in the movies that are, and you can see because Marvel will kind of adapt to that. And the Guardians, I think, let's be honest, Star-Lord was not a great character until he was a great character in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep.
But the movie kind of nailed it. And there are times when the movies do it better than the comics. It's sacrilege as a comics fan to say that, but Thanos is an example of that.
Yeah. I would say my favorite version of Star-Lord is in Annihilation, but again, like he has to go through what is essentially the dopest event that Marvel Cosmic can accomplish in order to make him a character. But even then, it's like, no, they established who he is better in the movies, because really at Marvel, he's just the remnants of a pulp sci-fi Buck Rogers character from like a spin-off book in the 70s or 80s, and then weave him into the main book and go, I don't know what to do with this guy. he has one of the most clunky superhero names I've ever heard, and what do we do with it? Even Bendis was like, I don't know, make him like we'll just give him the Bendis treatment, Yeah,
absolutely. So I think there are places where that goes, but again, it's an interesting thing to me because there used to be this kind of criticism of Marvel, and I think it's changed. I think they've had some really good villains, but like the movies had a villain problem, right? That outside of Loki and Thanos, like they're some of them haven't resonated, and it's like, because they haven't touched Magneto and Doom and Mystique, like the three best Marvel villains, that are out there. And it's kind of interesting that we haven't even gotten to them yet.
No, it's true.
Like, Doom should have his own movie.
Oh, I agree. No, we have a fully fleshed out Marvel universe, and yet we don't have like a rogues gallery. Truly, I mean, as much as it would, one of the other arguments is like they kill them all the time. How many great adventures are you going to have fighting Obadiah Stane or Ronan the Accuser? It's arguably the real repetition of villains won't come until we get characters like Doom and, like you said, Mystique, or I'll grant you Red Skull. It's a shame, Hugo Weaving didn't want to do any more of them, and they didn't have the idea of getting an impressionist until the end of the damn saga. But like, all right, fair enough. But yeah, we're in this weird, interesting place where like we got a fleshed out universe, and we're finally going to get some characters that I want. I always pitched like one of the phases should just be Doom versus the Marvel universe, where each sequel you make is just him versus, like, just set up Doom where it's like sometimes Doom will team up, like a Doctor Strange movie in which Doom and Strange Face is just Triumph and Torment, and so like they reluctantly team up, and like that's how you establish Doom as an interesting character, where if you set Doom against different aspects of the Marvel universe, you can then flesh out who that character is, and you really, engender him to your audience where they're like, oh man, I like this guy. Like sometimes you're like, oh, I hate Doom. He was such a dick to like Scott Lang in that Ant-Man sequel. But I love Doom because of how of that amazing moment with him and Strange in the Strange sequel. I alas, you know, we'll never know, but thankfully we have comics to fall back on where like there's 1,000 great Doom stories.
Yes. The one where he doesn't pay Luke Cage.
Yeah, Cage, where's my money, honey? Yeah, if only we could get that moment. But yeah, I wonder, and I'd love to pose this question to you: as do you think they announced the Secret Wars movie too soon, and could they possibly pull this book off?
No. Yes and no.
Right?
I think they did announce it too early because, you know, the first Secret Wars worked because it was made to sell action figures. So yeah, I read that when I was 3, 4, whatever, and I was like, yes, smash the toys together. That's what that series is. If you read that comic, it is, we're going to smash all the toys and for 12 issues, and here's the X-Men over here, and here's the Avengers over here, and here's Doom and his guys, and they fight. And then they go back and then they change sides and they betray each other. But that's it. That's the whole book. There's not a story to it. So I think, and then Secret Wars 2 is even more bonkers because that's like the Beyonder coming back and wanting to learn how to be a human. And
that one is
crap, and it's really
nuts. I love that book. That but like, it's insanity.
It gave us Boom Boom, so I'm grateful. But
nice.
What were they thinking? One. So I'm not sure what there's to pull from. Then again, the movies always kind of take the kernel of the idea, the essence, and do their own thing anyway. But I, you know, to me, what makes this version of Secret Wars iconic is Doom. It's a Doom story. Doom is the protagonist, you know, because he's always screwing himself over. But yeah, I don't know. I would have liked to have waited for that, but maybe they do Secret Wars 2 or who knows? I mean, I really don't know. Obviously, you know, where the movies are going and what's going to happen, and we're getting Fantastic Four and supposedly X-Men and all these things. And, you know, my relationships kind of are case by case. Like, I'll love one, I won't like another. And, you know, it just kind of comes down to is the writing good? Was this a good story worth telling? And, you know, if they can pull it off, awesome. I think people love to either go, Marvel's the greatest thing in the world and they can do no wrong, or the superhero trend is dying and Marvel's trash now. And it's like, no, like, this one's good. This one's not. This one's, you know, like, it's like any other movie or show. I judge them case by case. So we'll see what they can pull off.
Yeah. Sadly, just by nature of the fact that Secret Wars, it's never a one-to-one. It can't be, and it shouldn't be, because I don't think it would make any sense. But you know, we're not going to get like key moments like these, because this book, this Secret Wars series, is a culmination of. It's the culmination of Marvel. Like, it is, you know, some folks love to be like, this is a love letter to Marvel. It's like, this is the button at the end. Like, this is a post. You know, this is the postscript to the Marvel universe entirely. When Secret Wars the book ends, there's another universe. Like, we don't even call it 616 anymore, or at least that's the.
They weren't allowed to for a while. I think they lapsed.
They definitely have switched back. But you could tell, and I think I want to say that was a Quesada thing where he was like, you know, someone in one book called it 616, but as far as we're all concerned, this is the prime universe, and I don't like people saying 616 because it implies that it's like not the most important one. And you know, and I love the idea of it being the prime universe, but you know, the implication for me is like, this is like the Marvel 2.0. This is the next phase of Marvel, and that universe and these characters, which, you know, I guess you could if you take that kernel of the idea and put that at the core of the Secret Wars movie, that might work, where you're like, I'm introducing you to Doom. I'm introducing you to the X-Men and to the Fantastic Four and all this stuff. And we're watching, like, you know, Battle World is a patchwork of all the movies that have come before, which also includes, you know, like Fox and, you know, Universal and all the, and Sony. And it's just all that, you know, and who's Doom? Who is this dude who says he's God? And it's like, oh, just meet him. Here he is. And when we get back to it, I hope you don't mind being able to punch him or like take over his small country, because it's going to be diminished. But it'll be weird. It'll be weird to be
Yeah,
sure.
it'll be interesting. Well, it's funny you brought up like kind of the Prime, and it's not 616, and this is new because I think the other thing that's really interesting about this series is it's kind of an answer to years of people going, are they going to reboot the Marvel universe? Are they going to reboot it? Like DC has to do it every 5 years,
Yeah.
or 10 years. It's like Marvel's due for one. They're going to do it, and I think the Ultimate Universe, as we talked about, but the answer is no. Like they
Yeah.
just brought in Miles and a few concepts, like
Yeah.
Weird World it became a bigger thing, and some of the ideas, were used more. But no, it's the same continuity from Stan and Jack,
Yep.
and nothing's not broken. You can tell new stories in it, and I think it was almost kind of a like wink at audience because for years you're just like, yeah, they're gonna look, there it is. It's in print. It says the Marvel Universe is dead. The one from 1963 now is over. And it's like,
Yep.
not really.
Right.
Not
Right.
totally.
Yeah, it is. It actually could have been a little like wink and a nod. I'm thinking about like the Life Raft angle where Reed collects a few of the most popular Marvel characters to preserve from the death of the universe. And it reminds me a little bit of the New 52, where it's like, it's a complete and utter reboot. Nothing's the same. Except for all the Green Lantern and Batman and Superman continuity. Like
the ones that were selling well, they're very similar.
Right? So like Spider-Man, we're not going to mess with. We tried it once before. It doesn't work out, but put him over here. He's fine. Like Captain Marvel, Star-Lord, the Fantastic Four, like, those guys can stay. The rest is going to change.
Well, they did it. I mean, Heroes Reborn was their version of it to test those waters. And it didn't work out, And
nope.
What was interesting was Heroes Reborn was a bad crossover, as was Onslaught to a degree, and out of that came amazing books when they brought Avengers back and Cap and all that stuff. And I would kind of want to talk about this event ended up being amazing, and I do feel like Marvel had a hard time recovering from this. I remember there was just a dip a little bit. I know this was a real rough time for X-Men. This era, they were kind of just dragging storylines on. I'm trying to remember what the Spider-Man relaunch was out of this.
That's 2015. I mean, it could have been the Superior Spider-Man. It was all new, all different.
It was all new, yeah, all new, all different stuff. I just remember it was a lot of them fizzled. And weren't able to carry the momentum. It's a hard thing to follow up too when you have the best crossover. I remember it took a long time for Marvel to kind of get its footing back after this, and there was a few Marvel Now and this like relaunches to kind of get back to it.
It was Marvel Industries, by the way. It was Spider-Man got the company. That was the whole.
Yeah, that was it. Again, I love Dan Slott's. That was probably one of my least favorite storylines in it. I think it was there were some lulls after this where they kind of put all the creative juice into the story and they didn't have a lot left over. And there were some great books we talked about, the Doom one, and you got the
Doctor Strange
Doom one. Doctor Strange was great. Yeah,
that was Jason Aaron's run. Yeah,
right. There was a few that got some real cool relaunches, but I feel like the major ones struggled, like Hulk. I remember I can't remember, again, my timeline go off. The Mark Waid thing was after that, or if it was the Jason Aaron one, but again, it didn't really find its footing until years later with Ewing. Like it was a long time until the main core characters, I feel like, got back to something that was exciting, where there was, I think, some experimental stuff that came out of Secret Wars that was really interesting.
Oh yeah, no. When it comes to like, there was the all new, all different Wolverine. Jason Aaron's Thor came out of that.
Right.
They relaunched Old Man Logan, or brought Old Man Logan into the main universe, but like they also were hamstrung because we're in this bold new era of Marvel. We just like basically sent ourselves a love letter that said this is everything that was the universe, and now we're starting over, and we're still not allowed to use or really like blow away the X-Men or the Fantastic Four. So we still have to artificially prop up the Inhumans, and we got to see what we can do with other characters. And it's like, to lackluster effect. And that was also, I think, a period where they the all new, all different Marvel era is just like, you got a lot of really good stuff out of that. The Black Widow Somni book was incredible.
Yes, that was a great one.
You know, the new Black Panther book spun out of that. That was also the rise of Nick Spencer and the Hail Hydra Captain America story, which, whether you liked that twist or not, made Captain America relevant and interesting again, you know? But
yeah.
And then there was all the like, you know, there was a lot of unfortunately forgettable stuff in there that didn't really ride the wave. It didn't get a chance to really like appreciate the success and the like fanfare that came of it. Because and I remember there being a discussion that was the relaunching of a lot of books, obviously, and one of them was Spider-Gwen. And I remember hearing rumblings, that's how I'll put it, where some folks were given like 2 pitches, or asked to give 2 pitches. One in which Marvel straight up rebooted, and another one where they didn't. So maybe there wasn't even really a like, maybe they don't even know what they were going to do until they did it.
Right, and, it came down to the wire.
Yeah, and the other thing is they were lacking, you know, Hickman was without having an editor's status or being in charge in any way, just being a writer and just shepherding certain books, managed to herd the entire line into a massive story that culminates in one of the greatest crossovers of all time. Yeah. Preceding that, Bendis was the one who did that for the most part, you know, with a couple outliers being like Mark Miller's Civil War and so forth. But like, Bendis wrote the big books that guided us through, like House of M, Secret Invasion, Siege, Fear, you know, all these other stories. And there was no one person stood up and said, like, I'll take Marvel to the next goalpost.
Yes, I think you're hitting on it. I think it's a lack of cohesion coming out of this, where, like you're saying, that Siege era, Dark Reign, and then everything leading up to this, Secret Wars, it felt like there was a big master plan. I think after this was just this period of smaller events, or this is only going to be the Avengers over here, this is only going to be the X-Men over here. Major editorial changes. I remember the Inhuman stuff and what did Cyclops do, and you know, all that was, and maybe I'm just harping on the X-Men stuff because that's what I read the most of, but
I don't blame you.
A lot of that kind of, do they know where they're going, you know, with this? They don't have my full trust, but like I said, I think there were little things that came out of this, like all new, all different Wolverine was fantastic, that Tom Taylor run, where it was smaller characters having more self-contained storylines that didn't normally get attention, having breakout books where the big heavy hitters seem to be a little lost, I think.
Absolutely. Well, and what's funny is there's really, like, the lesson learned from it is not especially loud for those in charge, because out of these things, you got things like Moon Girl and Devil's Dinosaur. You got the Sam Wilson Captain America series. You got a new Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, Spider-Gwen relaunching. Like, basically what I'm saying is you have a lot of different properties that all enjoyed new life in multimedia franchises after this. And so how can I say that it wasn't a success when I'm making all this money from all of these different franchises that these books laid the groundwork for? But
which is what Marvel Comics is. Some functions for Disney is that they are R&D, right? They are generating the stuff. So yes, it was very successful on that end for sure.
Yeah. But if you're reading the damn thing and you like loved Secret Wars for everything that made Secret Wars what it is, it looks like you know, Marge's makeup shotgun, where it's just like a lot of stuff all at one canvas. So that's fine. You know, because like you said, oh man, I'm reminded that we got Jerry Conway's Carnage book, which was amazing. But yeah, unfortunately, the books that came from Secret Wars didn't match the heights of the books that were happening during Secret Wars, and
it cast a large shadow for sure.
And I think Marvel is like arguably still recovering from it. I wouldn't, you know, I'm not throwing shade. I'm just saying, like, it's, you know, I think Marvel is still wrestling with the idea of like, how do we do that again? And the closest thing we have is the X-Men. And
yes, X-Men feels cohesive in the way.
Yeah.
but I don't think we've, and their events all feel very cohesive and such. And I think that sort of became the model. And look, people also hit event fatigue. It's not just
totally.
Marvel, putting together, but the events now are much more. This is a Venom event, and it might cross over if you want to play in it. This is a Spider-Man event. This is an Avengers event. This is an X-Men event, and I don't think we've had anything that pulls the universe together like Secret Wars did. Like, there's been smaller ones, War of Realms and stuff, but that was a Thor event that a few people participated in. It wasn't everyone's going to get their moment. Everyone, this is the big thing that the Marvel universe has to confront as a whole. And I think, I guess, it might be able to do one of those again if they can, they have the right story to tell.
I think the closest thing we got, you mentioned Venom events, was King in Black, but again, at the core, it was about Venom. Like, it is through the lens of one or two characters, and you get to see those moments. You get to see like Iron Man pilot a Celestial covered in symbiote goo, but like, is that a culmination of all of who Iron Man is? No, it's Iron Man using the tools available to him from the Venom story, and it's like, that's cool.
It's a cool Venom moment for Iron Man.
Exactly. Which is fine. I'm not going to argue with you. It's still cool, but like, it's not. It doesn't hit the same chord. So yeah, it's Secret Wars. I remember. I'm very thankful that we were reading that book when it was coming out, and we were like in it, because when we were in it, like, being on this side of it, where we were just like making videos about it, we launched a whole show called Secret Wars TLDR, where each member of our team was assigned a series, and we would do like a book club, and those videos did great, and everybody was talking about it. It was such a moment in time where everyone was talking about Secret Wars. Everybody wanted to know more about Secret Wars. People had their favorite books, but they were also like only because of the limit of the dollar. Like, oh, I want to read about the that story where Captain America's fighting Hulks, but I just don't have enough scratch, and I have to prioritize. And it's like, I want to read about years of future past, but I just don't have the time or money. And it's like, well, I'm reading this one, so let's trade information and talk about it. And it was just like all that plus the dope ass book, like when that issue came out. And I just want to give a quick shout out. I don't necessarily to a person specifically, but like to the design of that book itself and how it manages to create a feel and give you an experience where like you turn the page blank, except for like a couple of really great graphic elements, like the logo or like the filigree and the like and the lettering that says like, oh god, like the Church of the Beyonder or something, like the Beyonder died for our sins, or it was Owen Reese died for our sins. Like moments like that where you're like, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Like, I know what those words mean, but I don't know why they are in that sequence. And just gives you, it forces you to like take time. And because if you're reading a comic book, especially if you're excited for it, like you will just rip through it.
Yes.
But the pacing is so well executed, and even when it comes to the printing of the book, they weave in the experience and make it so that you are like that it forces you to like slow down and just appreciate what you're looking at.
Cues in the background and clues of to order, and I think it was brilliant. And it, again, like Hickman is never one to like handhold in a really good way, where it's up to you to kind of decipher through language and visuals, where we are and what's happening in a very Grant Morrison way. I think they're very similar in that aspect. And I think, the first or the second issue when Battle Worlds was built, you're seeing it through the eyes of a new Thor. Because Thor is the police, right, of Battle World, and there's the new rookie Thor being taken around, but no one's like, well, this is World and this is Inferno World, and it's just you're just going through. They're showing up at certain things, certain events, like you're being toured through their eyes, but it's never outright, and I think it makes it so engaging because
I'm so thankful that you were like, I want to talk about Secret Wars, because it is a book that can't be understated. It can't be like it can't be overstated. We can't like not talk about it and waste time. Like, it's going to be a dope conversation, and it's going to be a book that I hope people check out. I'm going to just screw it. I have the opportunity to do it. In the comments down below, there's a copy of the like trade paperback you can go buy. If you haven't read Secret Wars, do it. but unfortunately, there's no way to recreate the experience of like when it was coming out, because like you'd never know what books were. Like there'd just be these other books, and it's one of those rare things where I'm very much like a guy who's like, if there's an event, give me the event and I'll read it. That's the end of it. But I don't want to read like tie-ins. I don't want to read all this other crap, because I know that like for the most part, creators are kind of like forced into those things. They're like, oh, God, I got to do a tie-in this thing over here. I'm kind of telling my own story right now. So I know that it's like a lot of times, the half-hearted effort to tie into something that somebody else is telling a story for. But not the case every book, like even underappreciated ones. There's a great one from Williamson called The Red Skull, which is essentially just Suicide Squad in the Marvel universe. And it's like, it's really cool.
Yeah, they all had good hooks, because it felt like it wasn't like, okay, pitch me a story that fits in between these two panels so we can make this make sense. It was, what's the most batshit crazy Marvel story you've always wanted to tell that doesn't make any sense in Marvel continuity? We'll take it and we'll do 4 issues of it. And you get that kind of excitement, I think, out of your writers. And again, and I've been a showrunner and I've worked for a lot of showrunners, and there are certain showrunners who go like, this is my story, we're doing this, get on board and pitch things that fit for me. And there's other showrunners who are like, this is this world I want to build and the show I want to do, but I'm so open. And you can just tell the hook of the idea of the show is so exciting that everyone wants to add to it and build on it. And you're like, that's going to be a successful show if the writers are this excited and the showrunner is allowing them to add to it. So I think that's what Hickman brings is, this is what I'm going to tell, but also have fun, go nuts, surprise me. And I think like that's why you get Krakoa and you get this.
That's true. Absolutely. Yeah. You don't get Krakoa without this. And unfortunately, I think because Hickman left Krakoa prematurely, we're not going to get Secret Wars. We're not going to get the Secret Wars of X-Men, but that's okay. We have Secret Wars.
We do. And I mean, we'd be remiss not to mention there's these mysterious new Hickman projects that are getting announced. There's something called Gods, and there's something with the Ultimate Universe, right? He's going back to.
Yep. Ultimate, whatever.
And so we have more Marvel Hickman stories coming, Will they be more like Secret Wars, or will they be more like S.H.I.E.L.D.? I don't know, but I will read everything he writes and again.
Yeah. Exactly. So check out that book. Jordan, thanks very much for being here, man. Before we go, you also co-wrote the book Minor Threats, which is available on June 21st in comic shops and, of course, online if you want to pick up that book. It is really fun. If you haven't already, you should check out the episode that in which Jordan and Patton and I chatted about that book and comics in general. I do not convince Patton to read Punisher, but let me tell you something. That book is fire. Minor Threats. Pitch Minor Threats really quick before we
Minor Threats is an original comic that Patton Oswalt and I and artist Scott Hepburn did. It is about these C-list costume criminals who, after the sidekick to the premier superhero is murdered by this A-list villain, everyone starts vigilante is broken, and he's out there just crossing the line. Our version of the Justice League crackdown, it becomes like a police state, and basically it becomes impossible for these losers to kind of do business and even walk down the street without being harassed. So a group of them come together and decide they're going to go find the A-list villain and bring him in and collect the bounty on his head and end all of this. And it's kind of a Fargo set in a kind of the vibe.
Yeah. I have read it. I can attest to it. It's a dope book. It originally came out, I think it's Dark Horse, right?
Yes.
And so you can pick up the original issues if you want, or you can wait for the trade. I highly recommend either one because it's a really fun story with some really, really cool characters. And I hope maybe if it's beloved by all, maybe we'll see more of them.
You'll be hearing some stuff soon. That's all I can say.
Looking forward to it. Well, thank you, Jordan, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you guys next time with an all-new episode. So long, everybody.